Welcome to this series on basic terms in statistics and research. In this presentation, we'll focus on how to distinguish independent variables from dependent variables. In empirical research, identifying the independent and dependent variables in a study helps us to determine the correct statistical procedures to use to analyze the data. In true experimental research, the independent variable is said to be under the control of the researcher because the researcher controls the experience administered to the participants in the study or the experiment. For example, in many studies in clinical psychology, researchers randomly assign participants into a treatment or therapy group or a control group, and the researcher will carefully define what is to happen to those in each group or level of that independent variable. Research that is not true experimental in nature will be characterized by situations in which the researcher has little or no control over what the participants in the study experience. For example, gender might be an independent variable in a study, and participants will wind up in different levels of the independent variable, not because a researcher assigned them, but because they are either a man or a woman. In this type of research design, we would say researchers have no control over who goes into the men's or women's group of that independent variable. Other names used to describe the independent variable in research include the predictor, the treatment, the intervention, or the grouping variable. In clinical psychology, we are interested in the effects of treatments on individuals' mental health, so we will frequently refer to the independent variable in many of our studies as the treatment. Whether the researcher has a great deal of control or very little control over the independent variable, the IV is the variable we are interested in observing the impact or effect of. We might think of the independent variable as the variable that might cause a desired outcome. For example, in clinical psychology, we frequently want to know if a type of psychotherapy will impact mental health or cause participants' mental health to change for the better. Although the independent variable might be thought of as the cause variable, whether or not we can truly conclude that the independent variable caused a change in a dependent variable is a function of the type of research design used by the researchers. The dependent variable is the variable that is being impacted or caused by the independent variable. We will measure participants' responses on the dependent variable to determine how the dependent variable is impacted or affected by the presence of the independent variable. For example, we might obtain scores on a measure of depression to see if a psychotherapy or independent variable caused or affected changes in depression, for example, which would be the dependent variable. Other names used to describe the dependent variable in various studies are the criterion or the outcome. In clinical psychology, our field is oriented toward the study of treatments, the independent variable, affecting mental health outcomes, the dependent variable. Let's continue our look at independent and dependent variables by looking at a sample database. Let's say we conducted a study in which all participants were depressed adults, and we were interested in the effect of psychotherapy on depression. In this study, the type of treatment the participants received would be the independent variable, and the severity of their depression at the end of treatment would be the dependent variable. We could randomly assign the participants to a treatment group in which they were provided therapy or a control group in which no treatment was provided. We might code as 0 any participant in the control group and code as 1 any participant who received the treatment. Note that the control group is a level in the type of treatment independent variable and not a variable in and of itself. And we could measure the effect of the independent variable or the treatment on mental health outcome like depression by administering the Beck Depression Inventory at the end of treatment. In this study, depression as measured by scores on the Beck Depression Inventory would then be the dependent variable. Scores on the Beck Depression Inventory range from 0 to 63, with a higher score indicating more depression. In this study, participant 101 was in the control group and received a score of 27 on the Beck Depression Inventory at the end of the study. In contrast, participant 104 was in the treatment group and received a score of 6 on the Beck Depression Inventory. Oh, here's one of those national statistics alerts again, really important message. In order to create a hypothesis and use statistical procedures to test it, one needs to be able to distinguish the independent from the dependent variable. One helpful way I've found is to rephrase the study or restate the title of the study in the following form. What is the effect of blank on blank? The first blank in the sentence is the independent variable, and the second blank is the dependent variable. Remember, we are interested in how the presence of the independent variable impacts or changes the dependent variable. In the sample we have been discussing in previous slides, the study question could be rephrased as follows. What is the effect of the type of treatment on depression? Note that it wouldn't make much sense if we rephrase the study as what is the effect of depression on type of treatment. So in this, after rephrasing this, type of treatment is the independent variable and depression is the dependent variable. An alternative way to distinguish between the independent and dependent variable in the study is to rephrase the study or the title of the study in the following form. If blank occurs or varies, then blank results or varies. Again, the first blank is the independent variable and the second blank is the dependent variable. By way of an example, Musser and colleagues published a journal article in 2008 with the title of A Randomized Controlled Trial of Cognitive Behavioral Treatment for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder in Severe Mental Illness. Please see the citation at the bottom of this slide. Rephrasing and simplifying the title, we could say, what is the effect of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, on PTSD? In this study, CBT is a categorical independent variable with 2 levels, CBT, and a control group called treatment as usual, or TAU. The dependent variable was PTSD, and the researchers used a number of ways of measuring PTSD, including the CAPS scale, which yields a score of the severity of symptoms associated with PTSD.